Okay, so here we are again. Thank you guys for joining our dream dinner party today. And we have a really wonderful panel who I will introduce. But I first wanted to just mention, as many of you know, we postponed Afar Live last week in respect to and in solidarity with this movement of social justice and equality, which of course, like all of you, I'm sure agree, travel is a huge bridge and teacher and empathy builder in that fight. And, we just thought it was necessary to postpone last week. And while we still realize that there's upheaval going on and the news can be overwhelming, our hard hit, beloved industry is reopening. And especially as all of this is happening, it's never been more important to bring people out into the world, as I'm sure you all agree. So we're very excited to continue highlighting the positive things that are happening. We've always wanted this to be positive and uplifting amidst the chaos and the devastation. So I hope that continues to be that way. I've talked to a lot of people about this now, and the past 2 weeks have felt really different because of the openings. Of course, it's no longer these glimmer of hope in the dark future. There actually is hope, and there actually is bookings happening. And in my own family, I told our travel advisory council this, but my brother got engaged and is planning a 300-person wedding in Italy next fall. So these things are happening now. But there's also a big difference between being open and then the experience of actually traveling right now. So we've gathered this wonderful group. If you just wave your hand when I introduce you, we have, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Luis Araujo, from the CEO of Visit Portugal. And you're in Lisbon, right? Oh, he's muted. Okay, I think he's in Lisbon.
No, I'm close to Lisbon. I'm at the beach right now. The weather is beautiful because today is a holiday in Portugal.
Oh, it's Portugal Day. Right.
Well, yesterday was Portugal Day. Today is a religious holiday. So
okay.
I'm at the beach.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We have Ignacio Maza, Executive Vice President for Signature Travel Network, who is on the Upper West Side in New York.
Hello, everybody.
We have Jane Mackey, the Senior Vice President and Global Marketing Lead for Luxury and Upscale Brands from IHG, who is in London, a few miles away from me. And we have Larry Pimentel. He's this, as you, I'm sure, know him, leading voice in the cruise industry, the former CEO of Azamara, but a long list of very high up jobs. And then we have from Afar, Laura Dannon-Redman, our digital content director, and Ellen Asmodeo, our executive vice president and chief revenue officer. So Laura, I will throw it to you, just talking about what's happening right now on the content side and how we're adding a point of view to this fast changing, insane news cycle.
Sure. It is fast changing and insane. I'm sure a lot of you have whiplash from, one major news story after another. And most travel brands have gotten into the breaking news game, and most news brands have gotten into the travel game in the last few months. So we're all covering it, right? And Afar isn't really focused on trying to compete with CNN's roundups or the New York Times. We always want to add our point of view, as Annie said, to our coverage. So from the start, since we've been in lockdown, we've been focused on empathy-led intel and inspiration. Now, if you've been on a call with me, maybe if you're with the tourism board, I've been talking about this a fair bit lately, but bear with me, I'm just going to repeat myself. What is empathy-led intel and inspiration? It starts with the word empathy. We are sharing in the same feelings as other people. We are trying to understand their point of view and their perspective as they think about travel, but also as they think about their personal health, their family's health, safety. We are all going through the same thing around the world. This is a very rare thing. So that means we are trying to answer the big questions that our readers have. We've started by soliciting input from our readers through newsletters, through social media. We have heard that from them, and we are answering those questions on the fly as specific articles. I just wanted to rattle off the names of a few that we've done in the last few months. Just the standards: will I be able to travel this summer? How do I get airline refunds? We are also looking to what kind of big searches are happening in Google. People want to know, is international travel still banned? Are hotels safe? Can I visit Florida? Can I visit Italy? Can I visit Europe? This is mostly from the US perspective. A majority of our readers are based in the US, so we are trying to answer first and foremost, how can Americans move around the country and around the world? We are also looking, so it's kind of the yin yang of this question right now is there are the practical questions to answer. How do I travel? And where do I go? Where can I go? And then the philosophical questions. Should I be traveling right now? I think our founders had a really great statement about that. If you go to afar.com, yes, we can be traveling, but should we, is the title of the article. And again, it's all very personal. It's up to personal risk perspectives. We are all on different points of the risk spectrum. You might be more friendly or averse. Within our own staff, our news editor is more risk averse. She's home with 2 small children under the age of 3. Our founder is probably a bit more risk friendly, and he is on the road as we speak. He has been bouncing around California, checking out California's new rules, which vary county by county. So what Afar is trying to do is, again, answer those big questions. That's our entire focus at the moment, and thinking about it in terms of reopening and rediscovering. That's the other side of this. Reopening is the intel. We are starting domestically because we anticipate that our readers are going to want to start traveling domestically first, within, tiptoeing out of their homes into their neighborhoods, seeing their family and friends whom they haven't been able to see for so long, and then slowly going out in kind of concentric circles out of their base. So we are thinking about, first and foremost, how do we travel across priority states, key markets in the US? We are doing dedicated articles around California, New York, Florida, the Southwest. And our readers are also very interested in outdoor travel. RV and camping have skyrocketed for us lately. Underrated national parks, state parks. The idea of being out in a crowd still feels very kind of tense for some, risky for some. So social distancing is very important. And as the CDC and WHO have told us, and that is who we continue to refer to for our main advice, it's less risky when you're outdoors. So we have started with US outreach, and then we will go farther and continue with global outreach. But it's hard to keep up with all of this, right? You're all in the industry. I'm sure you're hearing from customers, I'm in New York or New Jersey. Can I actually visit California without being quarantined for 14 days? The rules are changing constantly. So we have started doing outreach to DMOs. We have a survey that we've put together that we will be sending out very soon with a set list of questions for everyone. And we want to hear from the source rather than trying to think that we can be on top of every single change in every single county across the country and then globally. You know it best. So please tell us, can Americans visit? What is airlift like? Are hotels reopening and to what capacity? What are the social distancing rules that your city, county, state have applied? What stage of reopening are you in? County by county in California, it's different. State by state, it's different. And some states are seeing spikes right now. North Carolina, Alabama, Texas. But there, as we all know, there's kind of a reluctance to go back into lockdown at the moment. People are tired. It's been months. People want to travel. So even if other states or other countries are saying, slow before you go, people want to get out and explore. They just want to do so responsibly. So we are trying to tell readers how to be responsible travelers. That is our end game. Empathy-led intel and responsible travel. We believe in travel as a force for good. So we are not just thinking, where can I go? We are thinking, who wants me to come? And how can we better support the small businesses in those towns, in those communities? We are thinking a lot about our next trips. We are going to have a series called My Next Trip, where individual editors will write essays about the actual trip that they want to take, the very first step out the door. Mine is probably going to be about a weekend at Urban Cowboy Lodge in the Catskills. My husband and I have our 10-year wedding anniversary this summer, and we're going to figure out a way to celebrate.
Celebrating big time.
Right.
But sorry to cut you off, Laura, but I was just noticing the time and I have to move forward. But I think what you're talking about is so important because an interesting thing that you brought up, right, about Americans. I mean, we've always had a powerful passport, right? And is that powerful now? And will it be? So But I love everything and I'm very proud of everything that you guys are doing. So thank you so much. I wanted to start with you, Ignacio, because when we talked, we agreed that the last 2 weeks has felt different, and you're seeing it from so many different angles. Can you talk about where people are booking right now, and most importantly, who is booking, and also kind of what fear levels look like for luxury travelers from your point of view?
Sure. Thank you. 3 questions, so let me answer one at a time. I think in terms of fear, the 2 biggest concerns are, one, obviously, nobody wants to get sick, and number 2, nobody wants to get stuck. I think those are the 2 things that are really, really paramount right now in the mindset of consumers. In terms of where we are seeing new booking activity, I think it's in several areas, at the same time. One, we are seeing a massive amount of rebooking of cruises because our network sells, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cruises. And as you know, a lot of voyages have been canceled through September, through October, depending on the brand. So our members have been very busy. We have about 5,000 consultants in our network, and they are busy rebooking everyone for the latter part of 2020 and mostly into 2021. And I'm happy to say that in 90% plus of the cases, they have been able to rebook the clients, which is really great. In terms of new booking activity for 2020, we're seeing a number of things. One, there's a great interest in North America. So a couple of things that have been mentioned before, national parks are very popular. Ranches, for example, Montana, Paws Up, the ranch at Rock Creek, Triple Creek, Sundance in Utah, places like that. We also have a lot of interest in lodges. So some of the lodges in Canada, like Nemo Bay and Clyocote, that are opening this summer, bookings there. And believe it or not, in some cases, there are properties that are very heavily booked for weekends this summer. For instance, Montage in El Palmetto Bluff, which is a phenomenal property in a place called Bluffton near Savannah, Georgia, but the property is in South Carolina. They are almost fully booked for some of the weekends this summer, and they just reopened. So there is great demand, and the property is a perfect fit because it offers unique cottages and standalone villas and residences. So you'll have plenty of space, you have privacy, and at the same time, you have the swimming pools and the restaurants and all the rest. So that seems to be resonating. But in the middle of this horrible pandemic that we're all living through, there are a number of travelers who are very savvy and advisors that are really coming up with great ideas. For example, this summer is probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to Alaska. And why do I say that? Is because all the cruise lines have canceled the voyages to Alaska. So the number of visitors in Alaska is way, way lower than it normally is. So you have beautiful lodges like Ultima Thule and Sheldon and a lot of these places that are open this summer, and you get to experience Alaska and have it all to yourself. I mean, this is a place, 2 times the size of Texas, right? And then other places like, for example, Mauna Lani in the Big Island of Hawaii is reopening at the end of July. And to get around all the social distancing, they are only going to open with 50 rooms. So this is a property that has over 300, beautiful rooms right on the ocean on the Kohala Coast, but you're only going to have 50 guest rooms. I mean, what an opportunity to experience Mauna Lani and, pretend like you own it, right? I mean, talk about space. I mean, I think it's like 40 something acres. You're right on the ocean. So I think you need a savvy advisor to really help, connect you with ideas. But the bottom line is you absolutely can travel this summer, and there are some amazing opportunities right now.
Thank you, Ignacio. That is amazing. I didn't even think about that with Alaska and the cruises being canceled. If I can ask you, Luis, you guys were often used as an example way back when this started as doing an amazing job with marketing materials. Like it made me cry, right? Like don't skip hope or can't skip hope. And you just really made it about stay home now, but we'll be here when you're ready. Can you walk me through kind of your decision-making process with the government, of course, and how you weighed various factors in opening up, kind of from the economy to healthcare? Because you are opening up, and it was going to be for Americans, but there was a wrinkle this week, right?
Well, first, Annie, thank you so much for the invitation. It's great being here and great talking about Portugal. I was going to say to Lauren that if someone asks you where to go, just say Portugal. It's the simple answer. Just come. Now, it's been a challenge. I think a challenge for everyone, and I know everyone feels the same. None of our assets have been spoiled or damaged, so everything is intact. Our beaches, our monuments, our gastronomy, everything. When we launched the campaign, the Can't Skip Hope campaign was really important to us because we want to be relevant to people. And during this time, our biggest concern was we need to send a message that we will always be here, but this is not the time to travel. This is a time to think, to refocus. So it was quite a challenge. We decided to launch it reworking on a campaign we had. Everyone was at home, teleworking, because we stayed at home at least 2 months. And the objective was being very factual and to inspire. And I think this is what's the most important now. It's giving very good facts of what's happening in each country, and then being emotional also. That's why we launched 2 weeks later, which wasn't Visit Portugal, it was about Read Portugal. Instead of visiting Portugal, this was the time to read about our country through our writers and everything. So it has been a challenge, but I think we're ready. We've been ready for 1 week. Everything opened. We had scheduled openings since the beginning of May until now. And now I can say everything is prepared and open. Of course, we know and we realize we have a task here, which is building trust. We have to build trust among everyone, not only tourists, but also companies, hoteliers, restaurants, travel agents. Everyone needs to be comfortable and feel comfortable, not only traveling, but traveling to a certain place. So our focus now is working together with the local agents, restaurants, hoteliers, everyone, that they feel prepared to welcome the tourists and that they understand they are prepared. So we launched a stamp, which is the Clean and Safe stamp, to give instructions to equipments in Portugal, from museums to the airports, of course, restaurants and hotels and rent-a-cars and everything. It's a very simple, basic procedure. You just fill a form and you say you comply. What we do now is we make audits to those who say they comply. And we just launched a digital platform right now, which is called portugalcleanandsafe.com, where you can see every establishment in Portugal that has the stamp and what do they comply with. Mm-hmm. And more important, you can make observations if they comply or they don't. And immediately, so we have a traffic light, 3 dots, and immediately we do procedures in terms of doing audits to those restaurants or hotels or whatever. So I would say we're prepared. Everything is opened. Wow. We will open to European countries, to the Schengen countries this weekend for sure, except Spain.
For Britain or including Britain?
Including Britain. Well, there is a discussion still, but there was a meeting yesterday from the European Commission. And hopefully in July, we will open to everyone. We will never close. We still have direct flights with different countries like the US, but there are some specificities that you need to fulfill to come to Portugal. We don't have quarantine in Portugal. You're not obliged. As soon as you get inside the plane, there's no way they're going to stop you disembarking in Portugal. But it's a challenge. But we rely a lot on responsibility from our side and also from the tourist side.
Yeah, well, and you guys handled the crisis well. I mean, you're next door to Spain, which had a much bigger issue, right, with cases and deaths. So you guys did a good job. And can I ask you, I mean, being there now, what is it like when you go out to a restaurant to eat?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's beautiful because, I mean, you do have to do a reservation. This is one of the rules you have now. So you're forced to do reservation to a restaurant if you want to go out and eat. It's not a matter that you go to a restaurant and just come in. You have to wear a mask in public transportations. For instance, when you enter the restaurant, you wear the mask, but then when you're seated, you can take off your mask, and there's no problem at all. I was having lunch today at the beach, And a restaurant that was usually for 100 people, we were like 30. Beautiful day and the best fish in the world, I can assure you. So everything is the same. We've been adapting and adjusting ourselves. And I think this is the most important in terms of tourism and destination. The way we give the rules and the way we transmit the rules to a local and a foreigner are exactly the same.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, for instance, the beaches have signs. So if the beach is too crowded, you will have a red sign. You can read this in an app, and the app is in English and in Portuguese, of course. So everything we're doing is in English and Portuguese and other languages, so that everyone understands, especially at this time of the year, because it's summer and hopefully we will get a lot of tourists still.
Well, and I just got several questions. I just wanted to ask them right now while I have you talking about it. Specific requirements. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
A comment popped up that there is a quarantine in Hawaii, and I am absolutely aware of that. Maunalani does not open until the end of July. This is July 25th, and by then the quarantine is expected to be lifted. So if you go to Hawaii right now, yes, there absolutely is a quarantine, but the governor has said that by the end of July, it should be lifted. Of course, we're dealing with a very fluid situation. It is a new day, right? But I just wanted to make that point.
So book it for August.
Well, or July 25th.
July 25th. And I guess that's the question, Luis. I mean, the specific requirements for U.S. citizens or anyone that travels to Portugal, there's no quarantine and no testing requirement, right?
Just for the islands, just in Madeira and the Azores, you have testing requirements. So you either bring your own test done 72 hours prior to your arrival, or you do the testing in Madeira. So even if you want to do the test, you can travel to Madeira and the Azores and do the testing there because it's for free. And you stay in the hotel until they have the result, which is some hours result. But in terms of Portugal, there's no quarantine. There's no limitation in terms of traveling. So you can pick your car in Lisbon and go to the north or to the south without any problem. The only thing that we have still is the borders with Spain are closed. So you can't drive to Spain right now.
Thank you. Madeira was actually my last trip. I landed back in London on March 10th. So I have a very special place in my heart for Madeira. So thank you for that. Larry, I just wanted to move on to you and ask about cruise, because you have such an overall overarching look on cruise. How does it look to you? How can cruise recover? I mean, it's not one big monolithic industry. We recognize that there's all these different slices. What are you seeing and what do you think about cruise coming back?
Before I say that, let me just say thanks for the invitation. And I love Afar. It's a brand that has a purpose beyond profit. And Lauren said it so well. You know, travel does so much as a source of good. So thank you all from Afar, Greg, Joe, Ellen, Julia, all of you, the whole team. It's an amazing group. So I just wanted this.
Blushing a little easy.
This magazine. Cruise is in an interesting position, and I should say that the future is unknowable, but the past should give us all hope. So I'm a guy that's very much driven and motivated by data, by research, and by critical thinking. Cruise is impacted by the things that we are all impacted by. But fundamentally, there's about 2 or 3 items that are more impactful than any. There is not a COVID-19 pandemic. That is our collective reality. Now, perhaps the world will finally turn on the light bulbs and realize that human connection, where we all collaborate together and get a solution, is the most powerful thing that indeed can be done, and that our efforts ought to be put into things that are collectively wise rather than things that aren't, like nuclear weapons, because this is a bigger threat. So we do not have a COVID-19 pandemic, and that affects cruising in a big way, because as other people, Ignacio, Lauren, Luis, and others will certainly understand, there are going to be guests and travelers who are not concerned and those who are. And we have to deal with the aggregate of the totality of it. Now, I am an optimist, and I believe there will be a solution, but I believe there's a long runway here. It's not quite as quick as all of us would want. That is a reality of our times. but there will be a solution, and that solution will in fact improve everything, including cruising. So a COVID-19 pandemic exists, it affects ships, and I'll talk about that in a moment. This whole notion of countries and borders is one of my biggest concerns. I love travel. I've spent a lifetime connecting culture to culture and people to people. But borders are changing. Controls are changing. We are going from globalism to nationalism. And it's this notion of fear and hope. Which direction do we go in? Science should guide this, not politics, for God's sake. It's science that should guide this. But this whole notion of countries and borders with ships is paramount. Think about it. Portugal opens one date, Spain is a different date, Italy is a different date, but if you carry a certain passport, you can't get in. Who can make heads or tails of any of that? Folks, we do not have leadership. We need leadership that collectively puts us all together and has a singular protocol. It is nearly impossible in shipping to deploy a ship to a multitude of magnificent countries in the Mediterranean, all who have different rules, not only affecting guests. Many of our crew members are from Asia. Oh, but you can't come in. So how does the ship get in? You see, these are problems that are very, very big. Ships must have access. I was a part of countries saying, your ship can't come in because ships carry viruses. There was nobody on the ship who had any virus. Yeah. That's when fear has kicked in to a degree that is just unreasonable. People are not going to go on ships if they feel they're going to be contained. So the protocols and rules of the world have to be established. And even in the EU, as much as there is an EU, health protocols are localized. Every country and region is doing it. I got news for all of you. All the ports in a single country might not even be open. There are some parts, think about the pandemic in its early stage in the beautiful country of Italy, where portions of Italy were not open and other portions were.
Yeah.
So the cruise industry is between a rock and a hard spot. And reality is, the third item is they have a global PR problem. That is just a fact. Part of it is media created and unfair. Part of it is looking at the ships that were quarantined by governments that had even worse results that became the daily news. However, the industry is innovative. They're bright and intelligent people, and they will create protocols, I am convinced, that will make people feel safe. So again, COVID-19 exists, affecting ships. Countries and borders with inconsistent health protocols a problem. And I am so fearful of this nation-first sentiment of not globalization, but nationalism. And while I understand it, we are trying to protect each other, it is exceedingly problematic. Science must drive the process, not politics. So in general, the industry is in a tough position, but it will prevail, but it is not a quick return.
Well, and thank you for that, Larry. And I absolutely agree. We need leadership. It doesn't seem that there's any centralized leadership coming anytime soon. But I think that's, what I was saying about the powerful passport. It's very scary to have these borders, and especially if you're a cruise line, of course. Even though Ignacio, of course, is saying, and I've heard it many other places, that people want to cruise, and they're booking these cruises, right? So it's going to have to be figured out, this overwhelming, confusing back end side of it, right? With ports and government restrictions.
The people who want to cruise have been people who already cruise and they love it, and they're going to go back rather quickly. The problem is we have 19 new ships coming this year. I did say 19. And this industry needs new to cruise to flourish from an economic standpoint of view.
Yeah.
Right now, all of this is affecting all of us, affecting the magnificent retailers who are booking it. I mean, they can't give the proper information. The cruise lines don't have it because the countries aren't coordinated. I mean, this is a knock-on domino effect that has reality built into it. It will come around, and we all know history has taught us at the lowest points in human history, we recover. That will again happen here, but it can happen better if there is collaboration and coordination. And that's what I fear so much. It's just not happening.
Well, and maybe like we talked about, Larry, I mean, maybe those, $250 3-day cruise deals might go away. Maybe that's not a bad thing in these times. So
I'm happy to take any of it. We're going to start with short cruising first. You're going to find that the big ships are going to come back first. Why? Because they're the treasuries. And you're going to find short cruising to islands owned by the cruise line so that they have total control. That then they don't have to deal with the politics in various areas. No ship wants to get refused to come to an area because a ship in another area had a problem, which occurred. We are going to have long memories about this, and it's unfortunate, but short 3-4 days will come back. They will be very successful. They'll be price driven. Let me just say, while the seas are rough and high, the values are going to be really high in all sectors. And of course, cruises dependent on air.
yeah.
The small cruise lines, you got to fly to places. Well, there's not enough capacity at the moment. There will be.
Not yet.
And there's one thing that's paramount. We all want to be safe. We all want to feel like if we go there, we're not going to be harmed.
Right.
And so there's air travel connected to it, especially at the luxury end. So there's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of intellect going into it. And I'm an eternal optimist, but this is just a long runway. It's not a short one.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's what and of course, Laura and I have a job editorially, right, to tell the real story of cruises and of course, all of travel. But I think that media does play a big role. Thank you, Larry, for your honesty and transparency and eternal optimism. Jane, it's a little easier for you with hotels because you're not going into port. How does it look at IHG? I mean, you have all these incredible brands on the luxury side and of course on the lower end, but which brands are coming back and, what do you think the new luxury looks like now at a hotel?
Great question. I love what Larry said about fear and hope. And what we've tried to do at IHG is acknowledge and deal with the fear, and then give the reassurances to all of our contingencies that will give them hope. And I don't just speak about our guests, but I will talk a bit about the brands and travelers and what's on their mind. But we're also talking about our employees who have a lot of fear and uncertainty, our owners, which is individual hotel owners, many of which are the bedrock of their communities, whether it's a small town in the United States or the Six Senses in the Najaf Desert in Israel. They are the top employer and they're potentially in their community, and those owners, we need to support them, acknowledge their fear and support them. So guests, owners, our colleagues, and our communities, and making sure that those communities thrive. So it's not easy to manage all of those constituencies, but as they say, it takes a village to keep our industry and our company alive, and we've been very focused on all of them. In terms of where guests are starting to travel, you've probably heard these trends before. It is domestic, China leading the way. We at one point had many hotels closed in China. Now they are pretty much all reopened. And then I have to give a plug to the first week of April, we signed a deal for a new Regent hotel in Shanghai, and that hotel was a conversion. On May 15th, it flipped. So in just under 6 weeks' time, we signed and opened a hotel. So we do see a lot of momentum in China. And then we see the domestic market in the United States coming back. In terms of brands, China has been a bit more of a luxury play. Domestically in the United States, it has been more of our holiday and family of brands. But I think you can't sell something that's not for sale. And if you look at the distribution that we have, those are the hotels, the larger brands that we operate in the United States.
Yeah.
And many of them in those drive markets that you can get to. Other pockets are in Southeast Asia. Vietnam has a large domestic market. The UAE opened up in the last few weeks. We've had some sold out weekends at our Intercontinental Resort in Fujairah, which is a smaller emirate for those of you who may not know the Emirates that well. So we do see this domestic travel, and I think this is the silver lining is we'll really all understand as an industry how big that domestic market is, and it gives people a chance to explore their neighborhoods. So I guess in terms of the brands that are coming back, it's whatever product you have on the shelf, if it's in a destination that people can get to easily, they will start to come back. We're also very excited about the Japanese market and the investment the government is making, planning to make short-term on domestic travel starting from late July. Again, all things dependent on health and safety, and they are planning to have announced plans to market it as an international destination with a budget behind it later in the summer. So I think a lot of it is acknowledging the fear, as Larry said, dealing with that, giving the reassurances of cleanliness, safety, and then putting the product on the shelf and hoping people will buy.
You
and
also,
British
Jane,
Airways will resume flights to the States the first week of July, and I will be one of the first passengers.
Yes, you're going to go see your mom, right?
I am indeed, yes.
Nice. Well, and you also mentioned, I mean, deals being done, you know, there's an intercontinental in Rome coming, right?
Yes, we signed that deal during the pandemic. We've signed over 100 hotels actually year to date.
Wow.
Across all brands. But very excited that the Intercontinental brand will return to Rome. We've been away from that market for a few years. It'll be a multi-million euro investment to reposition an existing asset. And that will be ready for all of us to travel to in 2022. I know at least one person on this call that likes to go to Italy. So, a few. Okay, well, we'll look forward to welcoming you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane. Ignacio, we had a question for you on how you best, when you're talking to clients or travelers, on how to advise them on what to expect so they're not upset if it's different due to the dynamic nature of the situation. Would you have any advice for that on talking to travelers in that way?
I think what matters most is to be in close contact with your partners so that you have the latest information about what's happening on the ground. Because you're right, every destination is different, and even sometimes every resort has a different policy depending on what's happening locally. So having a very close relationship with the companies that you're working with and the products that you are selling is absolutely vital. I mean, in this pandemic, you have to get very close to the consumer, and you have to get even closer to your partners, because you really have to work together as a team to make anything happen, whether it's just a overnight stay at a hotel or a 2-week safari in Botswana. So I'll give you an example. Amanera, the Aman resort in the Dominican Republic in the Playa Grande complex, is going to open next month. But when it does, the law states that you have to stay on property. Granted, this is 400 plus acre estate, so you're not going to run out of things to do, but you won't be able to go hiking in the mountains and horseback riding and all of that activity. And you have to communicate that to your clients to make sure that they understand and that they manage their expectations. The last thing that you want is to have a customer that is paying a significant amount of money, per night, and be told, no, you can't do this. No, this is outside of the property and you can't do it. So, other parts of the world, when they reopen, like many islands in the Caribbean, for example, once they reopen, you're going to be absolutely free to go everywhere. Like, for example, July 22nd is a reopening day for Turks and Caicos, which we are eagerly awaiting. And when you arrive in Turks and Caicos, you'll be free to go everywhere. But you do need to understand, like, for example, on a particular resort, you will need to wear a mask in the public spaces, obviously not on the beach. And then when you sit down at the restaurant, as somebody mentioned earlier, as I think Luis mentioned at his restaurant in Portugal, you will need to wear a mask to the restaurant, but then once you sit down, obviously you need to take the mask off. So it's understanding these protocols and being comfortable, and everybody has a different perspective. But if you know your client well and you have a good relationship with your supplier partner, the company that you're working with, the brand that you are selling, then you can work together to make things happen. But I have to tell you, we have an overwhelming sentiment from our clients, and they absolutely want to travel. Yes, there are some people that are uncomfortable, but I would say the vast majority absolutely want to go away. I mean, people are battle hardened. I mean, they have been through, the 2 wars in Iraq, September 11, SARS, MERS, my goodness, it's like pages in the Bible, right? But I think the wanderlust and the desire to see the world is undiminished, in my opinion, from everything that I have seen and read.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think I read too that in New York, when restaurants open, you have to wear the mask the whole time, right? Except when you're
You know, that's interesting. I think it varies on the restaurant and whether you're seated in a terrace or whether you're indoors or whether you're sidewalk. I mean, there's all these tiers. It is very complicated, and it's changing all the time. I mean, we had a curfew that you have to be home by 8 o'clock as early as last Saturday, and then on Sunday the mayor woke up and said no curfew. So I mean, this is like changing by the hour.
It is. And I think, something to remember, last night we were talking to Nikhil in Turks and Caicos, and he was saying, you know what, something we have to remind ourselves is we are going to go back to something that we remember as normal, right? That's like, this isn't the way it's going to be forever. And even when I was in Switzerland a couple of weeks ago and it seemed 95% normal, I mean, these things go back. And I'm sure in Portugal too, Luis, I mean, things probably feel amazing, right? Compared to a month ago, right? So that's...
Yes, but to tell you the truth, I think we all have a capacity of adapting ourselves and understanding and complying with the rules. At least here in Portugal, I think part of the success was we had a lot of measures taken in place very early, at a very early stage, not only in terms of health, but also in supporting the companies, because we wanted the hoteliers and we wanted the restaurants to be ready. We always said we have to be on the front line when they just let us start running. We have to be the first ones, and we have to be prepared. And that was what was happening. Most of these people and companies have been giving their employees a lot of training. You can imagine. We've been participating on that. We have 12 tourism schools, and we've been giving more than 30,000 people training during this past 2.5 months. 30,000, which is a lot. But the most impressive to us is the ability of people and the interest. They're eager to learn during these 3 months, not only how to adapt to the new client, and we're having new clients with new demands, clients with new concerns, and we have to answer to that because our focus is turned into our client. And we've been doing that for the past years. So we've been elected for the past 3 years the best destination in the world. So we have to listen to our client. That's what we're doing now. But once again, what we see is there's a lot of responsibility from our side. And I agree when Larry said that this was about tourists who are concerned and tourists who are not concerned. You have the same with locals. You have locals who are concerned and locals who are not concerned. And the virus doesn't choose if you're a tourist or a local. We always say that. And I think in Portugal, everyone is so eager to welcome people. And one question that we hear a lot is, aren't you afraid that people come from outside and bring the virus? And I said, the virus is everywhere.
Yeah.
And we trust responsibility from our side, but also from the tourist side. So it's not closing the borders that we end this. And I totally agree with Larry. I would say more than leadership, we need coordination, because when we don't have leadership, we're left to ourselves. Yeah. So we have to organize ourselves, and we need a lot of communication. We've been doing that a lot with many European countries, and Portugal. I mean, we've been giving and sharing information and the strategies and the platforms. Everything we did on the Clean and Safe stamp, we gave it to everyone, to Switzerland and to Spain and to many countries, because I asked, how did you do it? They said, like this. Because more important than competing one destination with the other is competing against fear. And that's our biggest threat now, is that people are afraid to travel. And they don't have to be. I mean, living is a risk. But if you take precautions, if you go to a place that you know that people are concerned as well as you on fighting this virus, then for sure everything will be okay, and we will go back to travel. I mean, I think we all have dreams on getting inside a plane now, something we didn't a few weeks ago, but now we do.
Yes, absolutely. And the World Travel and Tourism Council gave you guys an award for that, didn't they? For having the first clean or the best clean and safe program, or?
We were the first European country to get their stamp,
Okay.
which was a recognition because it's not only about the stamp, it's the stamp, the training program that we have in place for the stamp, the platform that we launched. I mean, the requests we're doing now, and especially the coordinate. I think something that these 3 months told us is how much we need to be coordinated.
Yeah.
And having clear communication, and you're the experts on this, but having clear communication with people, but also with companies and locals, it's crucial. This is not the time of shooting to the sides or talking about different things. It's the time to focus on the travel industry and the tourism industry, always with one goal, which is the health, our health and your health. But to resume and to get back to what we used to have. So hopefully we will get that. Portugal welcomed 27 million foreign people per year in 2019. We came from a very good time. In 4 years, we grew 60% our revenues coming from tourism. It represents almost 15% of GDP. So you can imagine how important this is. But it's not a matter of economy, it's a matter of health. And it's a matter of getting back our lives, and we need to get back our lives in our hands.
Well, and if the health is in place, then the economy is in place as well, right? I mean, the economy. So
I think that one of the big challenges of this is complying with the rules, and we've been very good at that. The Portuguese population was an example in terms of complying with the rules. Just to give you a simple example, of course, things change and they have to adjust. Gas stations are forbidden to sell alcohol after 10 o'clock in the evening because young people used to go, as bars and discos are closed still, young people used to go to gas stations. So they're closed now. Everyone complies. There's no problem. There are no big deals or nobody claims about that. We just comply. And we know it's important to our health. We know it's important for the system. We never had big demand from the hospitals. The capacity in our hospitals stayed at 65, 70%. So we still had space to welcome people. And even so, we made an extra effort to get more people in the private hospitals. So.
Well, thank you for that. And I wanted to, because we'll have 10 more minutes, I want to ask Larry and Jane one more question and maybe get to a little bit more. But Larry, you've done a lot of work as well on consumer psychology. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think of buzzwords like personalized distancing, which I first heard from my friend Tiffany Dowd, these kind of phrases for people getting back out there, especially the luxury travelers that you know so well?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of research just based on my orientation with Boston Consulting Group. I've been involved in the G100 calls with various CEOs from companies. And the reality to all of this is at a core for all of it to occur, there has to be trust at the center of returning. Trust is really important. It's important in personal relationships, it's important in business relationships, and it is important in the way that we travel. So there is a body of contemporary research in the area of luxury that's very specific that says secluded privatization, 2 words, secluded privatization, are big buzzwords that get me as an ultra luxury or high net worth individual very comfortable in traveling. So that's an opportunity for retailers. Ignacio has mentioned that some of it will start domestic, as Jane has mentioned from China. We see that. So they're illustrations. I like to study the data, and there's a reason the data is important, and that is math has no opinion. The math allows you to draw an opinion, and it's powerful when used. So luxury clients are going to want to travel, but at the core is seclusion and privatization. And I might add that this whole notion of personalization with the luxury traveler is going to be heightened. And responsible and conscientious travel is at a core. That is to say, the luxury traveler is going to want to know what those resorts, what those companies did to the local community, how did they benefit them? how is sustainability, which is a real important item, how are you handling the locals or your local goods and provisions from perhaps the farms within the countries? Are the things localized? All of those things become a part of the psychographic thinking nature of the ultra luxury traveler. They're not going away, as Ignacio said, and he's spot on. We all want to travel. But as I said, some want to travel more, some want to travel less, some don't want to travel at all. And we have to deal with all of the populations, and trust and proper information and coordination and collaboration is really important to have that happen. There is, at the end of every storm, you know, when you're in the middle of the storm, I'm in Florida, hurricane comes, all we can focus on is that hurricane in the moment. Amazing thing, after the hurricane, I've seen tons of beautiful rainbows. There's also a rainbow at the opposite end of this one. But I like to understand the data so that I can get there, and trust is one of those huge, huge elements that I just think is glaring at all of us. Communicate more, engage more. As Ignacio said, those agents who are connecting with their travelers and being able to give them the information, they still want to dream. Let's help them dream. The world is a beautiful place. And frankly, there's so much opportunity in all of these countries and in all of these places. Boy, the excitement of travel is not going to go away. It's going to be pent up. So on the opposite side of this, I believe there's higher highs. We're at a pretty big low, but there are higher highs, and they're coming, and that's up to us to be positive about what we're doing going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Larry. And Jane, kind of in that same vein, you know, how do you make these people who do want to travel to your luxury hotels, how do you make them feel safe but not weird? Like not, you know, no hazmat suits in the lobby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about this in terms of, well, first of all, starting with putting meat on the bones and making sure that if we say it's clean and safe, that it is, times 6,000, nearly 6,000 hotels globally. So we have the IHG Way of Clean, which actually was just developed a few years ago with Ecolab and Diversity, who are leaders in cleanliness and products that drive cleanliness. But we also, you know, again, I'm going to steal this, Larry, shamelessly, the fear and the hope. We were fortunate enough to have our Intercontinental Hotel on the campus of the Cleveland Clinic. And we partnered with them, specifically, shout out to James Merlino, who is their Chief Clinical Transformation Officer, to help us deal with the fact, what additionally do we need to do because of COVID-19? And then we listened to a lot of guest sentiment of what do we need to do to give guests just that level of confidence. And so we have rolled that out through supply chain, additional supplies, and including a kit that people can have hand sanitizer or their own wipes. Guests can request that, and that's available to them. Hand sanitization stations all around the hotel in what we call the front of the house as well as heart of the house. And the face masks that, you know, again, give that confidence. A face mask protects other people. And you can smile with your eyes. So, you know, it's a training. We've done videos so our colleagues see what it looks like to welcome people, although you look different and the guest may be wearing a mask. Putting a note in the room that explains the IHG Clean Promise, what it means that it was clean to this standard. So it's not that rooms weren't clean before. We cleaned our rooms really well, as did all of our competitors. It's really, again, adding on what's necessary, which the Cleveland Clinic helped with, and then giving that confidence cue to the guests that we did put extra effort into it and thought into it just to deal with any fear that they have.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about that too, right? How do you can't compete on cleanliness, especially at the luxury level, right? And you also don't want it to seem like it's carcinogenic, right? The cleaning supplies. So
I do want to say I'm very glad, Ignacio, thank you for clarifying that you do not have to wear a face mask at the beach, because those tan lines would not be nice.
Agreed.
Yes, that's
but our colleagues will generally be wearing face masks for the foreseeable.
So we don't have much time, but I did want to ask, Luis, while I have you, you and Larry brought this up, sustainability. You mentioned, you know, this boom in the past few years. Are you guys also talking about sustainability as you move to a recovery, and how are you thinking about that?
To tell you the truth, that's our biggest concern right now. We've put sustainability in our strategy in 2016 when we launched the strategy until 2027, with a very centered focus in tourists, the workers that work for tourism, and the locals. Anything that we do has to do is for them as well as the planet. And we've been trying to evolve and to increase the concern of all tourism suppliers in terms of concern about the environment. And what we see now is a little bit setback on all of this. Having to wear masks, people don't know where to throw masks, using different products that sometimes are harmful to the environment. So the balance between this is very demanding. For sure, we will refocus on this and we will increase our capacity because we believe that our strategy in terms of sustainability is very strong, and we will increase that. Our purpose has to do is about welcoming everyone and respecting the differences. So surely we want to grow. Our country needs to grow. We need tourism as one of the main activities of our economy. But to tell you the truth, as someone said before, there are no voyages or there are no trips without storms. And this is just a storm. The good thing is we're all in the same boat, which is good. It's good to be in the same boat. We just need to find orientation, know where to go, and just decide where to go. So hopefully we will do that very soon.
Thank you very much. I know we started a few minutes late, so I'm going to go 3 minutes over. If you guys can just tell me where you want to go tomorrow, if you're getting on a plane. Ignacio?
To the Caribbean, to the beach. Please sign me up.
Perfect. Jane?
Portugal, to the beautiful Six Senses Douro Valley.
Nice. Laura, what about you?
Well, I was going to say Portugal too, but that's just pandering.
Sorry.
Los Angeles to visit family.
Nice. Larry?
Hawaii.
Nice. And Luis, where do you want to go?
Well, I was going to say I'm here already.
Yeah.
But I would love to go somewhere where we could all have this meeting together. And just when we turned off the cameras, just have a drink. Preferably in Portugal, of course. But it will be wonderful to meet people again and to be face to face and just talk about things that have nothing to do with this. Absolutely. And thank you once again.
Thank you. Ellen?
So I am going to the wine country in Sonoma at the end of the month, but I also just booked Turks, and I am excited about the Afar sailing that is coming up in November, that we still have holding all of our bookings. And hopefully, as the panel so impressively spoke about, borders will collaborate, and we will do our jobs in the travel industry and media to ensure that it's a less fearful act to be out and traveling, and to collaborate on how you can do it, what the expectation is. These are all really critical ways that we will get travelers out. I mean, the good news is that at Afar, we've been surveying our audience for the last 2 months, and consistently they are booking travel. And they are saying that in 21, they're going to book more international travel than they even did in 19. So while we are tiptoeing out, and I'm in New York and can't even go to a restaurant yet, but we are slowly getting out there, and certainly everywhere in the world is a different perspective. So we have the ability and the resources to get more people out booking. And I think that it's so well said. Laura, you mentioned Greg's quote earlier, that Greg talks about life is not a risk-free enterprise. So it never was. It certainly isn't now. And we have to be the ones to ensure the confidence to get more people out and taking action. I really do appreciate everyone's support today. This has been such an amazing panel, and we will continue to have these conversations. The next panel will be in 2 weeks on June 25th, same time. And I thank you all. And I really, like Luis said, I want to be in the same place having a drink with you. Thank you so much.